Hello, everybody, and welcome to Forever Sports. The Springboks could lose their number one in the world ranking this weekend were they to lose against Scotland by more than 15 points and New Zealand were to get a victory tomorrow. That is the considerably unlikely scenario at which the Boks would slide to number two in the world and would lose the tag of number one team in the world. However, we'd like to think that even if we were to go down to Scotland, we wouldn't go down by more than 15 points. Although Sienna Superlotta is saying that Scotland are quietly confident, not necessarily against the Boks in particular, but just in general. And I do think that there are warning signs that the Boks need to take heed of with regards to a Scottish side, which is definitely going to compete and push the Boks tomorrow. Before we get into all the different world rankings and kind of exactly what might happen, please do smash a like on the video. Please do subscribe to the channel as well. So lots of movement that can happen. And I mean, these world rankings, especially now with lots of games with teams that are quite, sometimes quite close to it and then quite a bit far further apart, there can be quite a lot of movement, so France versus New Zealand last weekend, for example, means that New Zealand can make up some points, whereas when South Africa play, for example, Wales next weekend, they won't be able to make any points, and as a result there can be quite a lot of different changes. In terms of this weekend, we will surrender our top spot if we were to lose by more than 15 points and New Zealand were to beat Italy, which if Italy play anything like they did last weekend would be pretty likely. However, a first ever loss against Italy from the All Blacks would see them to move down to third place if Ireland were to beat Japan in Australia, which I think obviously also, in terms of the way that Ireland are playing, should be quite straightforward. Although I think Japan are definitely on the rise, but I think Eddie Jones will need another year to really get that side to exactly where he wants it to be. France can replace Ireland in third if they were to beat Australia and the Irish lose to Japan, providing one of those margins is more than 15 points. So basically, in case you're new to world rankings, you get different points depending on if you win at home, depending on if you win away, depending on obviously who you play. That's kind of a bit of a metric in terms of how many places down, and then also on the score itself, and with a draw, win by more than 15 points, etc., etc. So those are all the different kind of metrics, and there's a whole equation. You can actually go work it out if you really want to, exactly what the different points thing can be. Interesting, Japan can enter the top 10 for the first time since 2023 if they were to win, and Italy and Wales fail to beat New Zealand and Argentina, because obviously Italy and Wales could rise quite a bit if they were to get victories over there. England could go as high as fourth if they were to beat Fiji, providing that Scotland lose and France are beaten by more than 15 points. And I thought I saw an interesting statement, I think it was by Rob Kearney, who was basically saying that Ireland at the moment do seem clearly off the pace of France, New Zealand, South Africa, but at the same time, clearly better than kind of the rest. And I think maybe England might be finding themselves in a bit of that kind of situation where they were on a good winning streak and were beating lots of the likes of obviously Wales, Fiji, Japan, but just once when they've played against your top sides, haven't been able to get over the line. And there's kind of this almost sort of middle ground that they kind of find themselves in. And I feel like Scotland have often kind of been that kind of side as well, where they sort of sit at 5th, 6th in the world, usually quite comfortably. A couple of losses they can slide down, a couple of wins they can move up, but they're just not quite at the same consistent level. But you can go up in the rankings up to, for example, when you're going up to 4th, despite a lot of pressure on Steve Borthwick. 7th is possible for Fiji if they were to beat England quite substantially and Australia were to lose, but they can't quite get to England this weekend. Scotland will lose 2 places they gained against Argentina if they are beaten, and England and Argentina both win. And Argentina can go up, will need to be won by more than 15 points. But a win could lift Scotland up to a new high of 3rd or else 4th possible. That's what I mean. If Scotland go and beats that, all of a sudden they could potentially go up to 3rd in the world. And I don't think too many people will consider Scotland the 3rd best team in the world. But again, you go and beat the number 1 side, and everybody sits there saying, well, maybe actually they are. Wales will return to the top 10 for the first time since 2024 if they beat Argentina and Italy fail to beat New Zealand. Georgia will remain in 13th place, whatever happens when they take on Samoa. And this is kind of your tier 2 nations. Elsewhere, Uruguay, Portugal, and Chile can only make up marginal gains if they beat the likes of Romania, Canada, and Hong Kong, China, respectively. Romania can become the lowest ranked team in the tournament if they were to lose, and Hong Kong, China, Canada, and Zimbabwe all cause upsets. Samoa, Spain, and Tonga could all climb as high as 14th with wins depending on the margin of victory and the likes of that. Hong Kong, China could equal their all-time high 21st, in case you're kind of monitoring what's happening in Hong Kong, China, if they were to beat Chile. which is a side that they will face at the World Cup next year. And USA will not get any reward if they were to beat Zimbabwe in the first meeting between the two sides. But if they were to lose, they could drop up to 5 places and lift the Sables to a new high, depending on the different results. So up the Sables, as far as I'm concerned. Let's go the Sables for Zim. But yeah, I mean, in terms of the world rankings, there's not a hell of a lot you can kind of always look to. But I always think it's a nice sort of barometer as kind of getting a gauge of where other teams are results up outside kind of when they play against your team in inverted commas. You know, like we'll watch the Six Nations, for example, but you know, South Africa right now is being used as the barometer. So England lost last weekend, was semi-compared to some of them in the game, but didn't have enough. If Scotland were to push South Africa right to the edge, that would actually probably be seen more as a victory for Scotland, although yes, there is obviously lots of change in the box side, but rather than sort of a panic stations from South Africa. And that's quite cool. It's you know, we're in a situation where everyone's kind of agreed that the gold standard are the box. And now we're kind of measuring teams up to that, to the point where if you beat the box, I think it probably says more about you than it says about the box right now, which is a really healthy place to be in from a Springbok point of view, because it means that, you know, yes, if we lose, it's not great and we need to review it, but at the moment, we kind of just feel it's going to take a really good side to beat us versus, you know, in England, where I think that they are beatable by other sides who are not as strong. You know, I mean, I think Japan hammering Italy kind of shows that Italy at the moment, I think, have taken steps backwards. You know, I think they've been growing in the last couple of years, but I think in the last 18 months, we haven't really seen much progression from them. And just in case you're interested, those are the different referees for the weekend. And the big one for South Africa versus Scotland is Pierre Bosset. And one of the other big ones as well is Carl Dixon, who will take charge of England. They've got Luke Ramos for New Zealand, Italy. Andrew Piardi will take on Japan versus Ireland. And Holly Davidson in charge of Fiji versus England. From a South African point of view, quite worrying at the lack of South African referees at the moment, really, in and around these matches. I think we do have a bit of a shortage of world-class, top-quality referees within the country that we need to try and address. What are your thoughts about the world rankings? Let me know down in the comments below. Smash a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel as well. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Steve, and I'll chat to you soon.